Oh, thank you so much, Katrina. It's amazing. Great information. So I think I'll just, yeah. Um, can I just maybe start with one question, and Francisco maybe can ask other questions, and I will
Yep.
encourage you. Please raise your hand and then ask your questions and or your real hand or just the icon. And so I was just wondering, Katrina, so this is, Mário de Andrade's Macunaíma is one of the most famous books in Brazilian literature. It is this modernist epic novel and groundbreaking for its experimental language, mixing different Brazilian regional and colloquial Portuguese words and made-up words and indigenous and African terms. And and for us, Brazilians, the novel feels both very familiar and very foreign. So I wonder if you could tell us about your first encounter with the book and how you came about translating it. And what do you make of it? Yeah, thank you. Just that.
Um, Ai, que preguiça. First of all, I just wanted to say thank you so much again to Gabriela, Christina, the PinT Book Club for inviting me. I spent 6 years translating this book, and it was just so much work. It was so much fun, but a lot of work. And so it's always a pleasure to hear from people reading it, to hear other people read it aloud. I see some really respected colleagues, friends. John Keane, I saw enter the room. He wrote the introduction. I see Danny Hahn. Hi. So I just wanted to say hi. And then I see also, I'm just going to plant this, an audio producer, Jonah, who I'm going to be working with on an audio book version. It's going to be like a long process, but I just want to say like we're just starting now to talk about the book, doing a kind of fun like sound collage version. So yeah, the first time I read the book was in a Brazilian literature class at PUC, the Catholic University in Rio. I was teaching English, living in Brazil. This was 2003, 2004, because it was the beginning of the semester. Um, maybe February or, like after Carnival. And I was teaching English. And in order to stay in the country and get a visa, I started taking classes at PUC. And they've required me to take 3 classes. I only wanted to take Portuguese language, but I said, okay, if I'm going to, to get the student visa, I'm going to just get some other classes. I'll just take, literature and the communications and just sit in the back. And so we read Macunaíma. And I probably understood like a third of it. But I think, even just hearing today, just like it's like the book is so much fun. It's so musical. I think it just really grabbed me on so many levels. I think one is just the level of language and sound. Mário de Andrade was a musician. He taught piano at the conservatory. He was a musicologist. There's just music in his bones, and he really translates that to the page. And I think on the other level that's more complicated is that the book is, this mashup of all these different folk tales and myths and jokes and riddles, and a lot of, like what we call in Portuguese, like popular culture, like popular. But it's just like there's so many different kinds of storytelling in the book. It also has this kind of feeling of epic. But it's also really, so on one level, it feels like a farce. It's very funny, it's very tongue-in-cheek. A lot of the humor is off-color, as, just kind of like everyday jokes can be. But I think also what really grabbed me and what I wanted to understand more was just how it was capturing this tension and complexity in Brazilian culture around race. We read from the section where Macunaíma and his brothers, who start off Black indigenous, kind of ambiguously so, then have this transformation with this water that's kind of like a strange kind of like baptismal water. It comes from the footprint of Sumé, who was among the in certain Brazilian indigenous legends was like Saint Thomas. So it's this kind of like like conversion water, and so one turns, Macunaíma turns white, like blonde, blue-eyed, and then one brother turns red, the other brother, remains black, and that's from an Afro-Brazilian folktale. So I think there's so much going on in terms of kind of like these clash of different identities and cultures within Brazilian culture. And I think Mário de Andrade himself being mixed race with African and European roots, being queer, but not open, not definitely not open about it in his time, the 1920s, a very conservative time in Brazil. I think all of that complexity around identity, personal identity, cultural identity, is embedded in the book. And even if you don't really understand everything that's going on, I think for me also as a mixed race person who's used to that, going through the world, people asking me like, what are you? And I have one parent from Vietnam, not from the US. I think that was kind of a way into the book for me. And so um, when I went back to the United States, I started a PhD program in comparative literature, and I focused on literature in English, some in French, and then also Brazilian literature. And the first time I realized that the earlier translation in English was just very inadequate, like the translation of "Ai que preguiça," which I translate as "Ah, just so lazy," in the E.A. Goodland version from Random House 1984 is "Ah, what a fucking life." So things like that, like it just really kind of off and really didn't capture the complexity and the poetry and the music of the book. And so the first time I realized that, I was teaching an undergraduate literature course, and I wanted to in comparative literature, and I wanted to teach Macunaíma, and I realized I just couldn't teach the translation. So I showed the movie, which is like its own thing, but I found it a better adaptation than the translation. And so fast forward many years after I finished translating the Clarice Lispector Complete Stories, um, it gave me a lot of courage to take on, to think, okay, I did this. I could do Macunaíma. It's only 150 pages, not realizing it was going to be even so much harder than the 625-page Clarice Lispector stories. But I just felt like I really wanted there to be a good version in English. And with a lot of information, I have endnotes. They're not footnotes in the text, but I have a lot of information at the back of the book because I knew it was going to be taught in literature courses. Anyways, I'm going to stop there. But so that's how it all started.